a film that no studio wanted to make, a script that went through many changes, and a lead actor that gets replaced partway through filming. Add it all up, drive it at 88 miles per hour, and you get Back to the Future. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Something is wrong here. There's something wrong here. Eric, what's wrong? Eric is not here. That's what's wrong. My stalwart co-host has taken a break. We scheduled this quite a ways in advance, and Eric had also planned something at the same time, so he will not be with us. And I feel like half of my persona is missing, but we're gonna carry on. He said, "Soldier on, fella." He said, "Don't be a baby, just do the damn podcast." So that's why we're here, and we've got a great lineup of guests anyway. Super excited. Let's get to the, usually you save the big news for last. You save like the dessert. We're giving you the dessert first, and it's Ray Fry. Ray Fry, welcome back.
Very happy to be back. Thank you very much.
Last seen way back. But we've been trying to get him on, trying to find the right fit for him, the right film. And he said, Back to the Future is my gig.
Great
So
choice.
welcome, Ray. So glad that you're here with us.
Thank you.
And then, here's the old news. Besides me, let's see, blogger extraordinaire, vest wearer. He is turning into the cosplayer of the podcast.
It's a green life preserver. I couldn't find an orange one. So.
And that is Mr. Nick Leshy, the blogger extraordinaire for City of Kick.
Thank you.
So you can find that online. And if you're looking, we always drop a link in the show notes. If you choose not to, and you just want to Google him, it's City of KIK. So it's not KICK. So if you're going to be daring and I'm just going to Google City of Kick, I don't need his link, you might end up somewhere you don't want to be. So use our link in the show notes. It's going to get you where you want to go, Nick, right?
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the plug.
You're welcome. And of course, Mr. Sean Grady. Drama from the past here in the present. This is the perfect episode for Sean Grady to join us on as well.
It really is.
It really is. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
You can find a link for drama from the past in the show notes as well. In the New York area, he does a lot of great work, a lot of one-act plays about the Revolutionary War era and its impact in the New York area, and the amazing but true stories about the colonial times and what was going on there. A lot of fascinating material. So welcome aboard, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great to be here as always.
Yeah. So now that we're here, we're talking about Back to the Future. I'm surprised that we never did this one earlier, and I'm surprised why I can't for the life of me think why I never did. I guess I had to wait for Nick to really get into the costuming part, like to get comfortable enough to get costumes on.
Save the clock tower. Save the clock tower.
For those of you watching on YouTube, you were just as jolted as I was by that, and the shit got scared out of me. But if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and you'll get more of that. But yeah,
Nick, do you have a picture of Dean and Eric with Eric disappearing?
Eric
gone.
is slowly disappearing from this episode. If it's not successful, we're going to disappear from the photo. All the episodes will be wiped away from the internet. So yeah, I'm not sure why we never got to this one. This is a classic among classics, and maybe we were saving it. We'll get to the stats and then let's get the conversation going. But let it be known, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, wow. And it's one that I don't really talk about. I think it's one that everybody takes for granted, but when this movie came out, it was a big one. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Budget was $19 million. And a portion of that was paid to an actor that never appeared on screen. Box office, $388 million. Boom. Shaka laka. Wow. This was a monster hit. It was nominated for one Oscar. Best sound editing. Didn't win. So
I think it did win. It won one Oscar, sound editing. It got nominated for I think 3.
No, it only got nominated for a lot of Golden Globes. It got a lot of nominations.
I think it did win an Oscar though. I thought sound editing it won.
Then it won.
But maybe you're right.
No, that's okay. Call me to the carpet in front of all the people listening. It's fine. quite all right. It's okay.
Nick, maybe you should host. I don't know.
Nick is slowly staging a hostile takeover of this podcast. Is what's happening. No. So Ray, let's start with you. Did you what are your memories, or what's your connection to Back to the Future? Were you too young to see this in the theater, or was this how did you come to this?
I was 5 years old when this came out, so probably not. I'd say maybe later in life. As I got older, and my sister and I, we would always watch a lot of movies, on TV. It was probably HBO, and that's when I probably first saw it. But I mean, now when you get on DVDs and you see all the behind the scenes on the movie, it's like amazing what this movie was then and how popular it still is now.
Yeah. The prehistory on this film is amazing. If you choose to, you can enjoy this film just watching it, for those of you that are into film and into like things that happen behind the scenes, you would think that this movie would have been a slam dunk from the beginning. A lot of issues. Sean, what about you?
I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
I recall. It was a summer of 5th grade. Yeah, I was 11. And I remember going to see it. I believe it was a beach shopping center. We had like 4 movie theaters around, and I loved the coming attractions. I was hooked from the coming attractions, and I couldn't wait to go see it with my friends. And our parents took us to see it, and I was blown away by it. It had everything, time travel, conflict, comedy, everything.
Suspense, a lot of cliffhanging.
Suspense,
a lot of cliffhanging action sequences. Nick, what about you?
I saw it in the movie theater when it came out. A small duplex, I think, Allerton Cinema right here. It's not around anymore.
That's in the Bronx.
And then my dad bought the video cassette back then, which it was like $100 or whatever it used to cost. And we played the heck out of it, and we watched that over and over again. And you mentioned earlier how it's one of your favorites, but people kind of forget about it. I would argue a lot of people think it's one of their favorites, but they wouldn't list it maybe in their top 10.
That's what I mean.
But it really is like not only a great time travel movie and science fiction movie, great comedy, but probably one of the most fun movies of all time. Like you could rewatch it over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I saw it in the theater, and then I saw it many times in the theater because it was just one of those movies. And there are one particular scene still kind of will still raise the hairs up on the back of my neck. Like it still can have that effect on me. It's just it's just for all the problem, that basically in a nutshell. This idea for this film was kicking around since about 1980. Robert Zemeckis was tossing around the idea of time travel and how to make something work. No studio would go near it. Nobody wanted to touch it. It was too wholesome because at the time you had Porky's, you had Revenge of the Nerds, you had these like teen sex comedies. And the studios, believe it or not, the studios no one's going to want this. It's too wholesome. So, Zemeckis kind of backburnered it. And then he made a little film called Romancing the Stone, which then gave him the clout to now come back and revisit Back to the Future and develop Back to the Future. So that's what he did with Bob Gale. The story went through a lot of iterations, a lot of weird things, a lot of different takes on time travel. And they finally kind of got it locked down. And then it came time to cast it. We'll pick it up there with casting. There was a lot of people, Michael J. Fox, everyone knows that Michael J. Fox, but he was not initially kind of the main person. There was C. Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio,
Johnny Pryor,
Johnny Depp, Charlie Sheen. There was a whole bunch of people that were kind of young Hollywood at the time, right? Was really it was almost anybody's game. Even Billy Zane, who plays one of the gang members, was up for McFly. So there was a lot of people there. Then, of course, for Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd's role was also let's see, Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow, Dudley Moore, Ron Silver, Robin Williams, John Cleese, Mandy Patinkin, Gene Hackman. He keeps showing up as alternates in our episodes. For like everybody wants Hackman in an episode in a movie, but few people get him. And believe it or not, James Woods would have been the evil. He would have been the evil Doc Brown. But and Robert Downey Jr. as Marty McFly. They wanted Michael J. Fox. He was big on Family Ties. He was, known for his Alex Keaton role. They sent the script to the studio, and the studio never gave the script to Michael J. Fox.
Never showed it to him. Never showed it.
What do you think of that, Ray? They sent it to the studio, and the studio just didn't give it to him.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I thought there was just the scheduling was that was the real reason.
Yeah. Well, that was it. They didn't want to lose. They didn't want to lose him because of that, right? They didn't want this conflict.
Wow.
So the studio just
what's that? He had only done 2 movies to that point.
He was doing Teen Wolf
Midnight
at the time.
Express.
Yeah, and he was shooting Teen Wolf near where they were filming actually Back to the Future at the time, or where they were going to film.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he was kind of low key doing some films, but they just never showed it to him. So I'm like, okay. And then famously, they did secure an actor, Eric Stoltz.
Wow. Yep.
Who, even he kind of said, I don't understand what I'm doing in this film, because he's more of a dramatic actor, and he was taking this method, Sean. It was definitely taking.
Yeah, he was having people call him Marty on and off set. He wouldn't like the character. I think he was a little bit more cerebral about it, and the comedy just wasn't there. I've seen some scenes.
That
was he's doing a bad job. It's just not Back to the Future.
Yeah, it was a different take. He was taking this more from a serious standpoint of what would the ramifications be of someone going back in time and affecting their families, and he was kind of taking it that way when everybody else in the film was seemingly filming a different movie. They were working with the light touch and working with that kind of stuff, and it became apparent about 6 weeks. They had shot about 6 weeks worth of footage, a good chunk of the film, and Zemeckis realized, this isn't working. So they reapproached the studio, and they gave Michael J. Fox the script, and they said, you can have Michael J. Fox, but it's got to be on the weekends when he's not working here. So this was going to be a grueling pace for even a young actor. And Michael J. Fox said yes without even batting an eye. He said yes. So the story goes is that Zemeckis was filming the parts in the parking lot, with the Libyans with Eric Stoltz. What he started to do was just film Christopher Lloyd, because he knew that he wasn't getting let go right then, but within a couple of weeks he knew Stoltz was being let go. So he figured, let me get the coverage I need since we're here with Christopher Lloyd, and kind of not shoot Eric Stoltz.
They knew it was gonna go on.
That's fucked up.
They didn't tear down the sets after they were wrapping with him, so they knew they were gonna reshoot again with somebody else, which is sad. You feel bad for Eric, but like you, I think it was Sean or somebody who said he knew, he said I'm a dramatic actor. I'm not a comedian. Why did they even hire? So I think he was having existential crises and thinking his career was over, and all that stuff. So I'm glad he still had a career after that. But yeah, if this movie was completed with him, it would have been a totally different movie.
It would have been something strange. It wouldn't have been. Yeah, it wouldn't have been what it was. And he came part and parcel with Leah Thompson, because he had done film. He was in The Wildlife with Leah Thompson. He would make some kind of Wonderful after this with Leah Thompson. I love Eric Stoltz. I really love Eric Stoltz. He's a great actor, just not for this. So that you get Michael J. Fox in there, and then the dynamic changes. He's a different height. Eric Stoltz is close to 6 feet tall, so he matches Biff in height. He matches Doc Brown in height. So visually, you're getting Michael J. Fox, who, Biff, Thomas Wilson towers over. That lends itself to comedy right there. That lends itself to a different dynamic. And Christopher Lloyd being so much taller lends itself to a different dynamic. So, and
the height thing brings up an interesting trivia bit that most people don't know. You all know that Elizabeth Shue played Jennifer in the sequels, but there was another person who played Elizabeth before the actress that we all know, and they recast her because she was too tall.
Melora Hardin
compared to Michael J. Fox.
Melora Hardin from The Office. She was Michael Scott's girlfriend, if you remember, in The Office. His first girlfriend. She was like she was in charge of like everybody. She was cast, and then they had to kick her to the curb. So let's just roll down. The main characters. You've got Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. You've got Crispin Glover as George McFly, who is absolutely marvelous in this film. He's such a quirky actor that this was perfect. He would have some problems later on. You got Leah Thompson as Lorraine McFly, Thomas F. Wilson as Biff. I said Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. Billy Zane as one of the gang members. You got Casey Siemaszko, who was kind of big in the late 80s, early 90s. He's one of the guys also. And then, of course, making his second appearance in our podcast, James Tolkan. He was the principal. He's the principal in this one. We did Masters of the Universe, and he was Lubick. I believe, and since I'm the creator of the podcast, he's going to be the first actor that's going to get a triple whammy, because we're going to do Top Gun, and we're going to have the James Tolkan trifecta. We're going to have the triple. He's going to make it before Nicholson.
There you go.
He's going to make it before Nick. No, wait, Nicholson did 3. Yeah, we did Cuckoo's Nest, Departed, and it's escaping my mind. The one with Tom Cruise. Why can't I think of it?
Few Good Men.
Few Good Men. I need Eric here. See, I'm losing my mind. So, so we already have the triple, but James Tolkan he'll be the third one. So let's get into this. Ray, what makes this so? What enamored you? What was it? Being a young person and seeing it, or is it being a film buff and enjoying the ride?
I guess as a kid, you don't get everything, but you still love the movie. But then as you get older, you get all the jokes, you get everything. Like you understand, oh, that's why that happened, or that's why, he did this, or she did this, or he did that, or she did that. I think you appreciate it more when, as you get older, and then, you have questions like, oh, well, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? So I think as I got older and saw the movie more, I think I appreciated it more. As a kid, you watch like, oh yeah, it's a great movie. But then as you get older and you like movies as much as I do and as we all do, then you kind of, appreciate it more.
Yeah. And I think a movie with this many potential plot holes, when you talk about time travel, you're opening yourself up to a world of hurt potentially with everything that could go, with logic. Well, there's a whole bunch of things that you can really kind of mess yourself up with. And Back to the Future, kind of, almost got there a couple times. They kind of skirted the lines, but I think that's what keeps people coming back is they treat that type of stuff respectfully. They don't kind of make it ham-fisted with the time travel. It's kind of like, here's the device. He went back. He's got to get back. We got to figure out a way to do it. He wasn't bopping all over the place and just kept on like going through time. And I think that's kind of helps. The DeLorean is the plot device. It gets us to where we need to get to, and then we land in the 50s, and then it just becomes a story. It becomes an Oedipal story, Sean, but it becomes a story. Oh. But nevertheless, and that's another part of it, right? I mean, they handle that pretty deftly. That could have gotten strange, but it was handled with a measure of innocence, because it was in the 50s as well. And he's such a dreamboat. It was kind of,
that was the sticking part that Disney didn't pick it up. You were saying earlier that it was not risque enough. There was all the Porky's and Animal Houses that were like the big comedies, and this was more tame. But Disney didn't pick it up because of the incest subplot. They were like, that's not really family friendly. We don't want to do that. So.
Yeah, but I think they handled it well, Sean. I mean, it was kind of, like I said, it could have gone there, but.
Yeah, I had it on, and my kids were watching, and they were like, why do they keep calling him Calvin Klein? I'm like, all right, they're younger than I was when I saw it, but it does. I wasn't so uncomfortable with it that I thought, oh, I better get them out of the room. I thought they handled it well. It's it's the almosts, right? That's, and then when she does plant one on him, whoa, I feel like I'm
kissing my brother.
Kissing my brother, and it's like, yeah, they like you said, definitely handle that and make it so that it's not so like, ugh, you don't feel like gross watching it and cringy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's comedic and it works, and it's
exactly. It was a subplot, but it wasn't it was a problem that had to be solved. And it's not like Marty was like, oh, I'm falling in love as well. He was just like, no,
right.
This is like, no, so it's not like there was she didn't know. So there's that innocence there too. It's like, she didn't know that that's her son. So there's
right.
there's a lot of, there was a lot of things to kind of give it cover where, yeah, it wasn't this totally like weird thing. Like if she knew and was attracted, which would have been strange.
And Marty gets hit by the car, which was what's supposed to be, George. And that's and the other reason why she falls for him. Like
he's a peeping Tom.
Yeah, no.
He's in the tree with the binoculars, and the woman is just like totally like, you don't even need binoculars, right? She's just like in the window is wide open, and she's like, getting changed. It's like, you don't even.
The dad says, another kid. It's like, so more than one has been doing it.
I hit another damn kid. So like, I guess
it's
like a whole
up about that scene.
What's that?
Can I bring something up?
Yeah,
about
absolutely. Go for it.
When he falls and he hits his head on the ground, is that really his head hitting the ground? Do you remember that part?
I hope it's a great sound effect because it's like
it makes you cringe watching it because it looks really real, like he banged his head.
Yeah,
every time.
A good Foley artist really made their money on that. I don't think they would have. Yeah. They would have, but it was he like knocked his head back and then he kind of raised it and then he's like, oh.
And then it goes back down again and you hear the sound again.
Yeah, it's like,
but they don't take him to a hospital back then. Like he's been unconscious for like 8 hours. They said,
put him in that house.
Yeah, it seems to be a regular occurrence of kids falling out of trees. So it's like it's just something that happens in the neighborhood. So some trees give apples. This one gives young teen men. So yeah, I really, like I said, they did handle it. It's a dicey plot point, but it was handled very smartly. And with respect for the audience, they didn't go for cheap stuff either. They kind of, this is kind of weird, and we knew it, and Marty knew it, so we were kind of, on the same page, as that character. I really enjoyed also the contrast, the scenes with the family, like how miserable Marty was in the beginning. It wasn't miserable. It's just like the family was just nothing to shout about. It's just like, with the peanut brittle, with the pouring of the peanut brittle, apparently, when George is eating the peanut brittle, apparently there was a scene before that where some girl, like a Girl Scout or something, came to the door and like conned him into buying a whole box thing of peanut brittle. So then he had all this peanut brittle around. That's why he's like randomly pouring it into a bowl and like eating peanut brittle. But Crispin Glover really kind of cut, like he probably had one of the hardest roles, I think, because as the older George McFly in the beginning, kind of detached from things, like kind of in his own world. He's like watching The Honeymooners and not really paying attention. And, Biff is making him write the reports. So, I really enjoyed what Crispin Glover was able to bring to it too. This is as much about Michael J. Fox as it is about the other actors as well.
That laugh was hilarious. Yeah.
Time to change that oil, Dad. Yeah, just really, really good stuff. And it kind of helps set, it kind of helps to do some world building that Marty is doesn't want to be like his dad, kind of is more, is afraid, there's that subtext in the beginning, right? When he's trying to be in a band, Sean, and he's kind of like, what if I fail? What if they say you're no good?
Can I just say something about that? I guess hats off. I get Huey Lewis sold his soul to have Marty crap up his song in the audition.
They did a rock version of Power of Love.
It was terrible. But I'm like, oh, well, that's why they're doing it, because Huey Lewis is the teacher judge with the glasses on. And they just, go ahead, crap up my song.
You're just too darn loud. Yeah, they actually asked Huey Lewis if he wanted to be in the film. He said, I'll be in the film if I'm uncredited and unrecognizable.
So that he wore glasses and
they slicked. I think part of his hair to the side and put glasses on. That's still Huey Lewis. It's not like they,
That's like Clark Kent and Superman.
Yeah,
come on.
It's not like they put prosthetics on him. It was like kind of, okay. But yeah, and Leah Thompson as well as Lorraine. You see you see them in the now, and they're just like, kind of like not likable people. It just kind of seems like a miserable, like they're just existing.
Stuck in a rut.
Yeah. It's just kind of
drinking too much.
They sit around the table every day, and they all just kind of do their own thing or complain. But Marty seems to have bigger aspirations. The brother is like working at Burger King. And I just, I really like how they kind of give you a lot of stuff without beating you over the head or telling you. Again, it's showing and not telling. So you got to see how these characters interact or didn't interact with each other in the now time, to kind of get that feeling that his friend, his only friend really is Doc Brown, is this eccentric scientist.
And why are they friends? I did think about that. I'm like, how are Marty and Doc friends, and why are they friends?
They never explained it, and we don't need to know, right? Like you never really, maybe it's because he was building. Maybe it's because he was building him that giant amp.
Yeah.
Which he ruins.
Yeah.
He got the message a little too late. Don't try it.
Yeah, we don't know how that relationship came to be or why. But it kind of what it does is it positions Marty as kind of an outsider, just like his father was. That he's not hanging. I mean, he's in a musical group, but seems like his best friend is this older gentleman that is kind of eccentric.
Well, that raises a good point about the timeline, then, right? Okay. Because my understanding, the way I think about it, there is a timeline where they never travel in the past, right? Obviously, so. When he gets shot by the Libyans, his parents are like a mess. Yeah. So they met somehow, right? But if you think that there is some kind of a loop, then you could be like, well, in one timeline, he'll always go back in the past, right? And give him that letter. So he read the letter, and so he might not have died in that one when there was the two pines. He might. So that's what's really interesting to me. How this kind of diverts into so many different things,
and that's where you can start to pull your hair out, right? And if and that's the trap with time travel movies. If you start thinking about things too much, you're like, okay, well then when Marty went in 1955 and came back, what did the Marty that was there do before that? Did he know? Did he purposely meet Doc Brown because he knew he needed to? Yeah, you can start to pull your hair out with that. And that's why, with time travel movies, you got to be careful because you could start digging logic holes. And in this movie, they just kind of just gave you time travel.
They do it so well that in the sequel too, when they go back, you can see the multiple ones from different points of view, You're shaking your head no.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get this out right now. Sequels that should never have been made.
I don't know.
Back to the Future 2 and 3.
No, I like them.
I firmly believe
it's not as good as the first one.
That Robert Zemeckis did not. The movie was not made for a sequel. The movie was made to say they have further adventures. And then Universal, obviously this movie made a boatload of money, so like we're making more. And Robert Zemeckis is like, I don't want to make more because sequels usually suck.
Yeah.
And Universal's like, well, we're making it without you. And Robert Zemeckis is like, well, then I'm going to do it. You're not going to, if you're going to fuck it up, I may as well do it.
He did them back to back.
Ray, do you like are you a sequels fan of 2 and 3? I saw them once in the theater and that was it. I've never seen them since. I don't think if it's on TV,
they were okay. They were okay.
It because you start to get yourself into those time travel plot holes.
I actually like 3 better than 2.
Most people 3. A lot of people don't like 3.
Really?
The cowboy one.
Yeah, the middle one was depressing. It was like The Empire Strikes Back of like Back to the Future.
A lot of folks love that second one, but I personally like the third one.
It became you call me a chicken. Like all of a sudden there's that plot thing where he gets mad every time.
That was forced.
It became too like we're trying to force this story on us that they really didn't want to. And the movie doesn't need it. It doesn't.
But it fits canon because I still think that's an alternate timeline. That's why Elizabeth Shue plays Jennifer.
and not because they just wanted a bigger name actress. That's.
I'm fine with your take, Dean. I think sequel. Well, I didn't mind them at the time because I was younger. I'm with you. I'm not going to revisit those. For any reason. I'm going to stick with the original. Because I think it's
even coming out of the theater when I saw it, I'm like, I saw Back to the Future 2. I'm like, Like it wasn't even like a reflection thing. Like later on, I came out of it not enjoying them. Like this, it was depressing. I didn't see the point of it. They're rehashing. They're going back to, they're going back to 1955 again. So you're just kind of giving us the same story with a little twist of now there's another Marty or there's another, like,
you had the
okay, now I got to keep track of like 8 Martys, So it became it was a little too much. This movie is perfect as it is.
It is perfect. Yeah.
It doesn't need anything else. It's a self-contained, it opens your imagination to think about other things.
And Zemeckis said, as long as he's alive, he will never allow a reboot or a remake. Although he's allowed cartoons, and now there's a Broadway musical
and video games. There's video games too.
But in terms of a remake or a reboot with different characters, but I think it still lends itself to other adventures, like you said. They're off, so you could do like, somebody else gets a DeLorean, and what do? Or you go back to 1985 now, and it'll have the nostalgia of when we saw it. It was like in real time.
Doesn't need to be done though.
I know, but there's potential. That's why it's a franchise that Universal is not going to let go. I mean, as soon as Zemeckis is dead, they're going to make 50 movies.
I mean, just like we talked with The Fugitive, like it's a movie that doesn't need to be remade because they'll just make it bigger. Mm-hmm. When Back to the Future, to take one of our guests, Roland Arucci's quotes, is it's actually a small film. It takes place in one town. It just takes place during 2 different time periods, but it's not a large scope of film. It's about him trying to figure out how to get back home, but he needs his parents to meet each other for that to happen. So at its core, it's a very simple plot. It just happens to be that he traveled through time to have this problem. And in order for her to get home, he's got to fix something. And Doc Brown was aware of it. And he kind of warned him, like, anything you do is going to have effects. And that was already, I met my parents already, great Scott. Heavy. Why are things so heavy? You keep saying heavy. Is something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull in the future?
Great line.
So there's a lot there, and Michael J.
And they
Fox,
set that up so many times.
Yes.
Like he says heavy, and they make one joke, and then finally the payoff. So it's just great comedic writing.
That and the vest. They did the same thing with the vest. The Coast Guard. And then when Doc Brown finally has the mind reading machine, he's like, "Oh, you're here for the Young Coast Guard or whatever to get a donation." So they kept kind of laying it in there, and then they pay it off, and they did it just enough time so it wasn't like, okay, like leave it, and kudos to Michael J. Fox because he's got a certain delivery style that is different than anybody else. Like, you made a time machine out of a DeLorean. Like, he's got a certain cadence that he brings throughout this film of almost like like he really is good at playing like disbelief. Is that right? Is that what it is, Ray? Like it's almost, he has like, every time he says something, it's kind of like there's almost like it's almost like a question whenever he says something at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about how Eric Stoltz was originally the character, and then it kind of makes you think, like, what if he did stay as Marty? Or sometimes you'll hear people, Tom Selleck was almost Indiana Jones, but they picked Harrison Ford. It's like, you think now it was the perfect choice, or it worked out for a very good reason. So I think Michael J. Fox, as good as he was in the movie and in Family Ties, he was the perfect choice. So yeah, he had something to him where he just made that character.
Yeah, there's like, what it is? He's very affable. Like, he's just, he's kind of like an everyman as a young guy, like kind of not believing what's happening to him. And, like, whoa, this is heavy, and heavy, well, that kind of a thing. And, and his sense of disbelief throughout the whole thing, I think really he's able to kind of sell that and put us in his shoes along with him, put us in his Nikes.
He makes it very believable.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, he's kind of got that everyman personality, and him being a little bit smaller also kind of plays into it, where, he's kind of got that, with Biff, the scenes with Biff, there's that obvious disadvantage, but he still, stands up for himself. He still kind of doesn't back down, like doesn't want to back down like his dad did. And he gets a firsthand glimpse, Sean, of how, the way, like that was one of the things I think Bob Zemeckis, the germ of the idea was, he goes, I wonder if I knew my dad when he was young and we were the same age, would we be friends? Like, would we be friends with each other? And that's where the germ for the movie came from, was from that notion.
That's interesting. And one of my favorite parts of when he first meets his father is that all of a sudden the bullying shifts from George to Marty, and George kind of goes and joins in, like, like, oh, it's not me, I'm not the target anymore, like, I'm gonna go, and meanwhile it's his own son. It's just funny. Meanwhile his son's there to protect him and try to shield him from the treatment, because he knows what's ahead for his father with Biff 30 years from now, that he's still going to be suffering the same crap, from Biff, and that I think that's part of what drives him also, like the anger of Biff, is that, oh my God, I can't believe my father put up with this crap for 30 years.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, and he ends up giving his father the fatherly advice, right? If you put your mind to it, you could do anything, and kind of, George is the one that is suffering from the confidence problems, and he's the nerd. He's very much like Marty. He's very parallel to Marty, meaning he's a loner. He doesn't have a lot of friends, and kind of, they put the sign on him.
Dreamer.
Very funny. Yeah, he's into sci-fi.
He's into sci-fi. Marty's into the music. They both have these big aspirations that they probably would.
I never knew you did anything creative.
What? Yeah, it's like weird. Like, oh yeah, I like to write, stories. He's like, yeah, I didn't know that about, So he's learning about, and in the beginning also, there's that tell when Marty's talking about his mother. It's like, oh, you think she was raised by nuns because of the way she's revising her own history to be moral or prudish, or boys never went out with girls, never slept, went out in cars with girls, and never did that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, she's like the biggest horn dog, like, in the whole school. Like, she, she's like boy crazy for anybody. He's such a dreamboat. Isn't he a dream? She's so good. She's so good in that role. But Thomas F. Wilson as Biff.
Great. Should have been his best supporting actor. He was wonderful.
He was really him, and when they were going through the whole thing with Eric Stoltz and they were letting him go, there was a little bit, I believe, a little bit of a hiatus. He thought he got fired, and he called Christopher Lloyd and said, "Hey, are we still on this movie? Like, did they get rid of everybody? Like, we're not sure." Like, they know, like, kind of like there was that little like thing. He wasn't too sure, and this was like his first major film role, major feature film role. So this was a big thing for him. He didn't really parlay it into anything else. This is like one of those people that has got that iconic role. It's not like he even got typecast. It's not like we saw him as other versions of Biff in other films. But when you watch him, he's just so good in this film. It's like, who's going to pay? I got beer all over my jacket. It's like, guy's driving drunk.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big thing back then. He totally crashed the car. He was totally drunk driving, and I have your car towed all the way to the house. All he got from me is light beer.
It's great. He's the same, like I think how he plays that character at 18 and then I guess 48 years, however I guess they're seniors, right? It's like he's the same guy, but like a little bit, I don't want to say mature, but like it's just amazing. Like he's more like he's the same guy.
Yeah.
From high school to now, but aged like appropriately with it. I don't know.
Yeah, he's like that star football player that never got over, like, like always is going to live in the past glory. Like Biff is like the same. Yeah, he's like the same. There's been no reason for him to ever change or ever do anything different. And, it's just the way he is. And he's just really, again, another tough role because he's got to kind of play a bully, but, at the end, the end in the car is a little, there's a little problematic too with the attempted sexual assault. I mean, this movie's got a lot of tawdriness to it, this film, right, when you look at it.
And again, to make it darker, if that timeline that started out the movie, there's that weird moment when he's in there, he grabs the beer after he messes up their car. He kind of looks at, McFly's, the mom. So you think what happened in that,
right,
that parking lot may have happened in that timeline, He didn't. Nobody punched him in the face, so.
Man, he's like, say hello to your mom.
Really
please.
Dark.
Say
really
hi to your mom for me. Yeah, it was kind of
makes the movie.
You think so? What, that scene?
No, I think that's what makes the movie. It's not like, they got older versions of the younger versions to play the characters. It's like they really acted. They really brought those characters, the younger and then the older selves to life. They had to like change their voices. They had to change, their physical features and everything. That's I think what also made the movie, and they were fantastic.
Yeah,
they were wonderful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They really captured the essence of middle age in the beginning scenes. In the beginning scenes when they're older, it's kind of like, it's like, oh, your uncle didn't get out of jail again, and it kind of, but then you see them young, and Marty can't believe it too. He's like, oh my God, these people were vivacious, and they were, they had their whole lives ahead of them, and he kind of like almost can't believe, like, how did they end up this way? What was it? And it was, yeah, and they're it's just such a great round of performances by everybody. That's it's a core group of what, 5, 6 roles that kind of make up the whole thing.
But even the supporting actors, Goldie Wilson, the bartender at the at the diner or wherever that was, like they're all great. I can't give you a tab.
You haven't ordered anything yet. Pepsi free.
Pepsi free.
Gotta pay for it.
All right, give me something without sugar. It's like, here's a coffee. That's about it,
A lot of product placement in that movie.
A lot of great stuff. Now, speaking of the diner scene, when that's the first diner scene where he meets his father, and then Biff says to George, like, don't come back here, and they do return to the diner. That's when George is going to approach Lorraine. He's like, give me a milk chocolate, and it slides down. He takes a swig of it, kind of an homage to like Westerns or something, like the bar, like the barkeep, beer, and the beer would slide down. It's like milk chocolate. And he says, yeah, he goes, I'm your density. And then Biff walks in, right? And Eric Stoltz appears in that scene. Eric Stoltz is literally in that scene for one frame, because the part where Marty goes to punch Biff, you can see that the person that makes that punch is a lot taller than Michael J. Fox, and you can see a little tuft of red hair.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have to still frame it, but Eric Stoltz made it into the film in literally like 1 or 2 frames.
There's also a couple of shots when he's driving the DeLorean that they decided not to reshoot because they thought he was far enough away. You couldn't see he was behind the wheel or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so he's in there, but paid. Yeah, Eric, and that was the thing, and that's why I said it in the beginning is Eric Stoltz got paid his full salary. So when you're talking a $19 million budget, he got to
work on it for 6 weeks.
Yeah,
and I'm sure the tabloids back then were all like,
I don't remember this. I don't remember any of this I don't remember hearing about any of this when it came out. And I was all over into reading about movie news, it was all that kind of stuff. And
but the industry, I mean, who would have hired this poor guy again?
Well, he did. He made some fired. Kind of wonderful.
He made so many. Yeah, he kept.
Pulp Fiction.
He's still working.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't because he wasn't doing his job. He was working hard.
This was miscast.
He wanted to do a good job. It just wasn't.
But he was also method. Like you hear the stories about it just wasn't working out even. So.
Who mentioned DeLorean? I think Nick did, or you said he was in the DeLorean. He was in the DeLorean.
He was. They shot him in the DeLorean.
This movie single-handedly kept the DeLorean, which a car at the time was a bomb.
Right.
Has totally made it into like the coolest thing that everybody would want. And I'm surprised they never tried to restart production on DeLoreans, because you would sell, if you came out with a Back to the Future branded DeLorean, you would sell a ton of them. Because it's back then. I remember when that car came out, and everyone was like,
"Think Back to the Future."
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah, and when that moved, when DeLoreans were around, I used to see them quite. They were around quite a bit. But then it just became like this dog of a. The company was embroiled. The CEO of the company was embroiled in some other stuff, and then it went under. But the fact that back then he even said that, like a DeLorean, like using a DeLorean, it's. Was quite interesting. So I would love to have a DeLorean, but not that one. That one just doesn't seem to be able to start, and I don't know why they didn't take it to a mechanic at some point to fix the starter. That's the biggest plot hole for me, Ray.
at a
runs
young
on
age.
plutonium. You can't. How are you going to bring it to a mechanic? You're running it on plutonium that you have to obtain illegally, right?
Could have went to the auto parts store and got one of them. No,
Plutonium.
Well, that you could have done. Yes,
that's the plutonium.
Oh my goodness!
Got my props.
Oh Lord Almighty. Yeah, and we've got the movie kind of ends, and you actually get a triple ending, because the whole thing is about getting Marty back in time, and how do you create a nuclear reaction when there's no nuclear of isotopes available. And that's through lightning, through the clock tower, which Nick has the flyer for. Is they know. Good, another plot device in the beginning was the one was like, save the clock tower. It was struck by lightning. So really good, really deft at planting these things that you don't know information you don't know you're gonna need.
Right.
Later on, it's like it's whatever. It's just a weird woman. Okay, and you're gonna need that. That flyer that she innocuously hands to him.
And Jennifer,
and then
she
writes.
The
only reason he keeps it
he
is
holds on to it.
Yeah,
right.
The only reason he keeps it is because she wrote a phone number and I love you. So a really neat thing that he just stuffs in his pocket, and then he's like, oh, we know when lightning's going to strike. We know when it's going to happen. So that's a really neat thing. For me,
strikes twice. Right?
It does, because they know exactly when. That part of the movie that pacing gets a little wonky for me. Like when it's time for Marty to drive, and he's supposed to be on like a certain timetable to get there, and the alarm's going off, and the car's not starting. So isn't he going to be off in the timing then, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what part I'm talking about, right? Like when the alarm clock goes off, you got to start the car because we have a time that you're going to get there and hit the pole by the time the lightning strikes, right?
So he should have been late.
He should have been late.
Yeah. But that's movie. That's that's the movies for.
That's the only thing. That's my only gripe is that whole sequence doesn't, doesn't line up properly for me.
That's the suspense. That's what makes you you're like, holy shit, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it?
So you can say, well, he really floored it then, and
Yeah. I guess it's
Doc gets
continuity
electrocuted and survives.
Well, he took a mild shot,
Nah,
the
like the conductor. I don't think does he quite make it, or does it go through him?
You know what it looked like? It looked like the Emperor was doing a number on him, like he did on Vader. Like he got.
Yeah, he'll be all right. Just roll him around.
That's where he
Vader
got
from planet Vulcan.
That's where he got the that I looked it up. All these years of watching this film, and when and George's like, no one on earth can ever make me do whatever, and then he goes to see him at night with the suit on, and he puts in a cassette that says Eddie Van Halen. It says Edward Van Halen. He puts it in, and that's one of the greatest scenes because and it's like he doesn't know what to do. They approached Van Halen. They said, we want Van Halen was like, no. Like, you can't, we're not going to use our music. Edward Van Halen said, I'll be more than happy to do it. And that's why it says Edward Van Halen on the cassette. It doesn't say Van Halen.
Interesting.
So Van Halen, the group said, nah, what? We don't want to be involved in the movie. Eddie was like, I'll do it.
He knows. So he works with Michael Jackson. He does Back to the Future.
You get that screeching.
Like, I don't need to.
Yeah, you get that screeching Eddie Van Halen like in his, and he doesn't even he can't even take the headset off. It's like just like in his brain,
Yeah.
That's a great scene.
Of music, the score of that film, I think, is so important. The music, the music, the chase scenes, and the music is just as much a part of
Was it Alan Silvestri? Was that who?
Alan Silvestri.
So yeah.
I think the music, you take that out of it, and it's just.
I mean, Universal has pretty much taken that music to be like the theme for Universal almost. It's like
you hear those tones and
you've got that magical score. And then you've got Huey Lewis in the News, right? They were, Huey Lewis was a little reluctant to do this. He had a little issue with Ghostbusters previous, where they asked him to do. Yeah, they asked him to do Ghostbusters. He said, I don't want to do it. Ray Parker all of a sudden comes out with a song called Ghostbusters, which sounds a lot like I Want a New Drug. They settled out of court. Huey Lewis is like, I can't write a song called Back to the Future. Like, I don't think I can do that. And Zemeckis they're like, write whatever you want. So you got The Power of Love and you got Back in Time. And you also have Eric Clapton on that soundtrack as well, and you also have Lindsey Buckingham on that soundtrack.
Lindsey
as well,
Buckingham. Oh, you beat me to it. I was gonna say it.
and
come on, I was already going there. You could have easily beat me to it. I was going there.
Some of the classic songs are good too.
Yeah.
You know?
What's the name of the song, Dean? What's the name of the song?
Time Bomb Town, of course.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
You know,
yeah, the
host of this show.
For Johnny Be Good, right? That's not Michael J. Fox singing. That's a guy singing.
No, that is terrible. It's not even close.
Yeah, that guy's got like a much more mature voice.
Suspension of disbelief, like Ray said. You got to just suspend your disbelief.
You know who was influenced by
in the moment when you're watching the theater? Did you say that's not Michael J. Fox singing?
I kind of did.
You're like, that's Marty McFly.
But you know who was influenced by to go into music by watching Back to the Future? And I only know this because I was trying to win tickets to his concert.
Who's this?
John Mayer.
Really?
Mayer. He saw Back to the Future. He wanted to be Marty McFly with the guitar, and that's what got him.
I think he eclipsed Marty McFly.
That is great.
Yeah.
But he didn't eclipse Marvin Berry in the Starlighters, though.
No,
he's not.
This is your cousin, Marvin Berry. Hitting
Listen to this. You know that new sound you've been looking for? Listen to this.
Which is messed up. If you're already appropriating wonderful music, but I still think the timeline works because he still had to have he
gave his own
Goldie
music
Wilson was still going to be mayor, so it's not like Marty McFly made him. He wouldn't have been mayor if Marty McFly. He just thought about it earlier. So
that was circular logic because it was Chuck Berry's music anyway. It's not like they gave that to someone else who then made.
I like to think that Chuck is on the phone and thinking like, I had a dream about that song last night. Just like Doc Brown was like, I dreamed about the flux capacitor, So it's all like you said, a circular loop.
Yeah, it is. So that's the first ending. There's like 3 endings in this film. The first one is to get back to 1985. So they do that. Then the second ending is Marty decides to change time. He goes, well, if I could just go back and tell Doc Brown about what's going to happen. He goes, well, I have a time machine. I could just do whatever I want and I can try and save him and try and do that again. Which he does, but Doc Brown read the letter that Marty wrote him saying not to do that. So Doc Brown broke his own rules as well too. He's like, what the hell? So it's a very cavalier attitude about time travel.
Marty's timing was off, 10 minutes. I was like, go back an hour. 10 minutes gives you nothing. So he couldn't start the car, so he was too late. So if he hadn't read the letter,
especially knowing that the way that car was such a lemon, that
Did you catch the Lone Pine the first time you saw it in the Twin Pines? As a little kid, I don't remember if I did or not.
Mutating son of a bitch!
You killed my pine.
Kill my pines. Absolutely. So then he gets back, he goes back and early enough to supposedly save Doc Brown, but Doc read the letter, so that's all good. And then there's a third ending where we get the whole resolution to everything. Is that there was a change, and that's kind of weird too, right? That kind of brings that always brought up a question to me. Is he goes home, right, and he's in bed. He wakes up the next morning, and he kind of calls back to the beginning of the film. Or actually when he goes to meet Doc Brown when he falls asleep. So he gets up the next morning and notices that things are very different, right? Mm-hmm. My question to you, does he then have memories of does he have the same Marty memories he had before? So does he know that everything has changed? I mean, obviously he knows everything changed, but is that something that, kind of remains with him? I always wondered that. Or over time, does it just kind of like that kind of goes away and he just kind of.
I mean, I think he loves the new mom and dad and brother and sister, and the house is immaculate, and the role reversal of George McFly and Biff.
Yeah.
George McFly is now like the top guy, and Biff is the guy outside, waxing his car and saying, "Oh, don't con me."
Yeah.
So, and I think Marty likes that. And then he goes out to the garage. He sees the car that he wants. Jennifer pops up. He likes it. And then, Doc Brown comes. But at that moment, I think he likes the new Marty McFly life.
But he kind of doesn't like that scene when he goes in to get the truck. He kind of like doesn't. He kind of like, it's kind of like he's not really sure. Like it almost seems like there's a moment where he's kind of like, I'm not really sure like what's going on, or obviously I guess this is a better ending for him, but there seemed to be that like that scene when he lifted up the garage door and he sees it and he's kind of like holding the keys. He's kind of like not sure what the ramifications of this is going to be.
I don't remember that actually.
It was a very subtle with him. It was a very subtle thing.
Are you asking if he has memories of his parents before he sees the new version of them? Is that what you mean?
Well, obviously he does, but is that going to be something that he always has? Is he always going to be living in that timeline? Like he's now the only one existing in a different timeline.
Well, wouldn't the sequel, I mean, because it's been a while since I've seen the sequels, but it seems like in the sequel things can have a chance to go awry again, where the old Marty and Marty, George and Lorraine can come back to being what they were, right?
I think so. From the aspect of this film, it was just something that I always wondered.
I don't see any regret with that scene. To me, it was always like, because at the beginning they
hyped what I'm talking
he always
about, right?
wanted that. Yeah, he always wanted that kind of a car. So that was like his status symbol. Like, I want to be a success. I want all my dreams to come true. So when he gets it, I never saw like that doubt or that whatever little glimpse you might have seen, and they might be there. Because it's one of the things that Crispin Glover was saying he didn't like about the movie, the message that success is wealth and getting a new truck and that kind of thing. And now life is better because look, I got things, it could be a valid point there too, but I think they explore some of that in the sequels a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to him, it's like, wow, everything has changed for the better. I got the girl, I got the truck, my family's, not dysfunctional, if it looks like,
But there's a whole life that he didn't live, though. He didn't get to live any of that,
fact.
Right? And
so
maybe that's what it was.
I think his memories are all what were in the prior lifestyle.
Yeah, so there's a whole other existence.
Because he didn't know. He's like, why are you wearing a suit? What do you got a job? What's going on? Like, he didn't get any of that.
Yeah, there's a whole other.
The car was still wrecked.
Yeah. What?
Exactly.
What do you mean the car is wrecked? Like, what the hell's going on?
Biff.
Biff, don't con me. So just to go back to the Future 2, only because we're talking about Crispin Glover, he did not return for Back to the Future 2. Did not want anything to do with it.
What happened?
What they did is they
wanted more money, and
they wanted more money, and they said no. So they got just whoever actor, and they put like Crispin Glover makeup on him.
Yeah. And
Crispin Glover sued later on. He said, you can replace me, but you can't make someone look like me. Right? Like you can't.
And even detractors of Crispin Glover are like, thank you, Crispin Glover, because that's a precedent now where you can't just, we can't afford, Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man anymore. We'll just get somebody to make his face just look just like Robert Downey Jr. No, you can't do that anymore, So that was like a precedent. It's the Crispin Glover law now,
Yeah, you didn't want to pay me, but you got someone and put prosthetics on them to look exactly like me.
He got
so the audiences thought it was me, and I didn't want anything to do with this movie because you didn't want to pay me, So it was a dicey situation, and it was only recently that Crispin Glover started talking.
But that's now when they recast characters. That's a reason why, like, as fans, we're like, well, couldn't they get somebody that looked a little bit more like? No, you can't legally. You can't do that anymore. Unless you get the other actor.
Yeah, strange, very strange. A lot of weird stuff, a lot of weird stories around this film, but it's still, we put all that aside, and it is endured. There's something special that was captured despite all of this stuff, despite the rewrites and the weird storylines where this was going to go. And it originally was going to be called the Man from Pluto or something like that.
Spaceman from Pluto.
Spaceman from Pluto. Really strange title. Wow. They didn't think Back to the Future anybody would understand what that meant, and through it all,
Zemeckis didn't. He was like, I don't know how to say no to it. They can't call it. So Spielberg just wrote a memo. It's like, haha, funny joke. And that's it.
They figured if they blew the guy off by thinking it was a joke, that recommendation that he wouldn't be upset. And it kind of worked. But, we talked a lot about the technical stuff of this film, but there's something magical about this film that everybody likes it. I don't know what the universal. Does anybody know, Ray or Sean or Nick? Like, what is it about this film? Is it the level of innocence that it has? That in a world of cynical films, that Back to the Future still treats its audience with respect, but gives it something special. With a story that just kind of, anybody can kind of, we don't have to necessarily relate to it, but you can kind of drop in and just enjoy the ride.
Zemeckis didn't relate.
It's a ride.
What's that?
It's a thrill ride. I think, like you said, you're on the edge of your seat. You don't know, like there's so many things that could go wrong, so many things that need to go right for him to get back into the future. His family, he's messed up the connection between his mother and his father. He's got to right that wrong. I just think there's so many things, and you're like, how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to do this? And to watch it all unfold and it all ends the way it should. And to see it in the theater, I think like that's a movie that I'd like to go back and revisit in the theater. I think there's magic to it.
I took my kids and they loved it in the big screen, so it still holds up.
Ray, do you think it's what along the lines of what Sean said? It's kind of having all these threads that you need to manage, and being able to manage them and sew them up neatly. So you're not really questioning. I mean, we're questioning stuff because we're kind of really doing a deep dive on it. But when you walk out, you're not really walking out with those questions. You're kind of walking out of that film. When I watched it, I'm like, yeah, this was just great. And is that what it is? Is it really because of the story and how there are so many different things that get weaved together that you almost don't realize that it's happening as you're watching it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a basic time travel movie that was made in the 40s or 50s. It's a time travel movie made in the 80s. So there's suspense, there's drama, there's love, and it's all put together. And then, you go see this movie and you walk out and you're like, oh, wow, it was great because, oh, I like this part because this happened, or I like this part because everything is put together. And then, at the end, there is a resolution, to everything that happened in the movie. The parents, they meet, they fall in love. He goes back to his life, that whether he wanted it or not. Mm-hmm. So you just
it ends better than it started.
Yeah. There's that whole stranger in a strange land vibe, right? A man out of time, trying to fit in. But it's interesting because he's a man out of time, but he's in familiar territory. He never leaves the town that he's in. Mm-hmm. Never leaves the town that he's in, and never meets anybody new. Right? Everybody he encounters just a younger version of.
But I think nostalgia is also a big factor. I mean,
so?
It's comedy, it's action, it's a great story put together, great performances. But I think the nostalgia thing, when this hit, the 50s, I think, was making a comeback in terms of nostalgia. The music that was in it, the styles. And when he first goes back, it is that idealistic. You see the folks at the gas station coming out, the service, and everything's
and the music is playing. Mr. Sandman is playing. And
it's like a classic movie playing, not a porn movie, But then you see the dark side. There's still bullies. There's still, things are still happening, And Zemeckis, what I was going to say before was like, he was a little nervous about doing this because he's like, he didn't remember the 50s. He grew up in the 60s and 70s, right? And he was like, even now, he thought maybe he was a little too old to really capture the present day at the time, which was the 80s, But I thought he did a great job with both. And now you look back from now, our point of view, and even the 80s has that nostalgia to it, So it's
absolutely,
the movie holds up and just captures all of that, the good feels,
I guess that's what it is
for those kinds of movies.
Yeah, it's definitely a creature of the 80s, but I think what you're saying is it kind of transcends the 80s, despite that it's firmly entrenched in the 80s with the fashions and the acid washed jeans and like all the trends from the 80s are there, but in spite of that, or despite that, it doesn't feel like a dated film. And maybe, I don't know, maybe because when I saw it when I was, I don't know how old was I, 18, 19 or whatever, and really into film and really like kind of loving those, enjoying those taking those rides. But yeah, it's I don't know anybody that says I don't like Back to the Future. There's plenty of people that don't like Star Wars, don't like Star Trek. I never watch it. I don't get it. I'll understand. I don't think anybody has ever said, I don't like Back to the Future.
It's a great movie, period. Yeah.
And if if there are people that will never be on this podcast, so we don't have to worry about
it's
it.
Crazy
we live in our own little hill valley.
It's crazy that 1985 is further away from us now than 1955 was.
No, Sean, why do you got to say stuff like that for?
I'm sorry.
What are you going saying?
He's a man of history. You know,
because when you thought of the 50s and in the 80s, like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, it was yeah. It may as well have been the 1800s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm watching it. I'm like, it's longer since 1985 than when I watched this movie in 1955. That's crazy.
We're probably closer now to 2055 than we are to 1985. If Sean, you really want to get depressed,
stop it.
You started. All right.
Hey, I won't even say my next comment because that'll really.
Okay, go for it.
That we might be older than the McFlys.
Yeah.
The parents. So we're approaching that age. There you go. Good night.
Try the veal. All right, so let's go once around. Favorite scene. I have a feeling. I think because I said there's one scene that makes my hair stand on end every time I watch it. I don't know if that's a giveaway, but let's start with Ray. Favorite scene. What do you got? What really kind of for you does it?
You know what? I think when he first meets his father
in the diner,
and then like you see like, you know, his like
what?
What? You're George McFly. that's how it all starts. Everything.
Yeah, it's very surreal, and it's played very surrealistic too. And that angle of Crispin Glover's like profile, and Michael J. Fox kind of comes in the side of it, and he's kind of like looking. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. You know? Yeah, that's a great choice, Nick.
1.21 gigawatts. That whole scene where he meets Doc Brown, knocks on his door, you know, and you know, that whole sequence, you know, when he asks him about who's president in 1985, Future Boy, you know,
tell me, Future Boy, who's president?
But when he realizes that, you know, the power that you're going to need is like, where am I going to get? And he's looking at, you know, Thomas Edison,
Einstein,
whatever it was.
Tom, I never do.
How could I have been so stupid?
What was I thinking?
I'm sure in your day you could just go down to the corner store and just pick up some plutonium.
Apparently, yes, because you've got some. So apparently that has come to pass. It is available at the local bodega. You can just go in and get some.
But it just shows how great, you know, Christopher Lloyd is in the role.
Yeah.
You know, just fantastic.
Yeah, playing on a little bit on the Jim Ignatowski character from, you know, a little bit of that, you know, from Taxi. There's a little kind of not a lot, but he's definitely bringing that a little bit of that vibe, that eccentricity vibe to it. You know, and definitely playing the kind of the nutty professor type guy as well. Sean, what do you got?
We got 2 Christopher Lloyd films in our
Cuckoo's
Nest. Okay.
Cuckoo's Nest and this one,
and this one.
He's sneaking up on the list.
He is. I'm gonna go with always enjoy the scene when Biff and the bullies go after him on skateboard, and he is in the front. He jumps up on top of the car, runs to the car, gets back on the skateboard, and they hit the manure truck.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm a big fan of people getting their comeuppance in films. So I don't know how you. Oh God, that car is just ruined. That's it.
You caused $300 damage to my car, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, $300
out of your ass.
That's more than that.
I guess back then
just needed cleaned out. Yeah, just needed to get cleaned out. Yeah, that was a really cool scene because Marty is like getting pushed by the car, so then he decides to run over the car and catch the skateboard on the other side. And the literal expression is, oh shit.
Yeah. The music and the kid, he took the board from the kid, he gives it back to him. I don't know. I enjoyed that. That's the one that always stands out for me.
The scene that does it for me is actually, it's the first ending. There's actually 4 endings in this film. It's the car scene with Biff. And when Marty is locked in the trunk and George, you know, opens the door, he's like, hey, you get your damn hands off her. And he turns around and it's Biff. And he's like the movie gets really, I'm getting tingles now. Like the movie gets like really serious all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, he's like, turn around and walk away. You know, like you, McFly, are you listening to me? Turn around and walk away. And he's at that point where he's about to do, like, he's been bullied by him the whole time. And his reflex is to just, you know, disengage, you know, and he's about to, and then he's like, no, Biff, you take your damn hands off her. And like, for me,
and she asks, she's like, you know, help me. Like, like, you know, so I think it's the connection. It's not just, you know, it's
genuine.
She makes him be braver than he is. Like, you know, it's like that's the connection, which
that turn is genuine. Like that turn for, you know, because you know, Marty's been talking to him about asking her out and trying to build his confidence. And you mean you want me to touch her on her, you know, and he's holding the bra when he's hanging the laundry, you know, you know, and that whole scene, right? Yeah. When, you know, Leah Thompson jumps on Biff's back and he throws her down, and that's when she's like, you know, and he's got just the angle that Zemeckis uses when he's twisting his arm, and she's like, no, you'll break his arm. And it's like from like Crispin, like it's kind of up on Crispin Glover, and the face, you know, how his, you know, his face changes from like, rage. I can't do anything to anger. Like I, you know, it's time for me to do something. And you see that, like, you see the fist just like ball up, you know, and Crispin Glover's face, like he really, like, for me, like like that was probably one of the best performed scenes, because the character really needed to make that change, and it wasn't goofy, it wasn't unrealistic, it was just kind of like, and it was kind of serious, you know, she's getting assaulted, and he's kind of like, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure. He wasn't a hero from the beginning, you know. And he made that turn, and every time that scene comes, I still get chills, because it's kind of serious. It's kind of like, oh wow, this really got like dark all of a sudden. But it's what needed to happen.
That's an excellent point, because it does, the air comes right out of everything, and it's like you're right.
It's not fun. There's nothing funny anymore. There's no, you know, there's nothing being played for laughs. Even, you know, even up to Marty being locked in the you know, in the trunk, and I sliced my hand, and then Marty's got to go do, you know, kind of see what happened, you know.
Right. Is Marty going to somehow save the day? And it's really just up to George.
Yeah, like, he can't.
Like, there's no more Marty. Marty's not there. It's just George, Biff, and Lorraine. And
that's the beauty of the film, is that Marty could not, despite, you know, like the whole thing was his thing was to manipulate this into happening. And he couldn't. It wouldn't have worked if he manipulated it into happening, because it wouldn't have been genuine, right? Because Lorraine wouldn't have been afraid, because Marty really wasn't doing anything. Right. So taking Marty out of the equation and making the threat real, like Nick said, then that Florence Nightingale effect took hold of Lorraine, where, you know, he hears the savior, and he's like, you know, are you okay? You know, and then that guy at the end's like, come here, and he's like dancing with her, and he's like laughing. He's like pushes him, excuse me. And he like pushes him.
That's one thing I had a problem with.
Here we go.
Porky's guy at the dance grabs Lorraine, and George just goes, oh, okay. You know, he just knocked Biff into next week, and this. But it was almost guy's going to take,
because that's who he is. It's like it's taken, and it's because of what he just did that you're seeing the progression. Because, you know, he says it to Doc. It's like he never stood up to Biff in his life, and it's like, oh, so you're seeing it's not just like flipping a switch and suddenly he becomes Superman. It's like now, because he did that, he could do things like push this other guy. Like his personality just changed.
What I think it was, Sean,
it should have happened faster. It should have.
I hear you. Well, you know what? I think it's a little imposter syndrome. Like that thing that happened outside was like a heat of passion moment.
Right.
And George didn't like that. And he kind of like sulked away. He's like, yeah, well, you know, that really wasn't me. This is really me. Like, I'm not going to confront anybody. And then he's like, no, fuck this. Then he walks over, like pushes the guy.
But yes, yeah. I can buy that.
That's the way I always read it. Is like, you know, like he kind of like what he did before was kind of like so intense that, you know, he almost was not him. You know,
And the
like he didn't make
cutaways.
this.
Was me in 2020.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's not like this.
I didn't care.
Yeah, he's not like this ass kicking like Rambo all of a sudden. Like I like
No.
that. He kind of got pushed around a little bit and is like, oh, you know, no, I'm not going to take that now. I'm going to try it
And they
again.
had to drag out the scene of the pictures fading, and then the music was
Right,
building up,
yeah.
and then he just like pops up. You know, it was like it was great.
Earth Angel, Earth Angel.
Yeah. I didn't
But
care
then
in 1985.
minor quibbles.
2023. That's my minor
Yeah.
nitpick right there.
Like I said, these quibbles are minor, and we only do it because we love talking about the films, and that's what it is. And
Exactly.
yeah, this is what. Yeah, like I said, you know, to circle back to the beginning, I think Nick or Ray said it is you know, people forget to put this on their list. I think you just take it for granted as a great
Right,
film,
yeah, I never
and
think
not
of it.
yeah, and you know, oh, you know, on the waterfront and Star Wars and Casablanca, you know, these important films are going to be in my top 10, you know, and yeah, Back to the Future should be there.
I think
You
so.
know,
It should.
it earned its place, but I think that's why maybe people take it for granted because it's like Back to the Future, but a really special film. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. If you've listened this far or watched this far, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. Go do that. It helps out. Yeah, Sean, you're going to be on the bottom actually, so you can kind of do that, right? You're right near where the subscribe button is. Perfect. Ray, you could do it too. You're right near the like button, I believe. So you could just kind of go like that, and they'll give us the like button. But Ray won't do it. Look at him. He's belligerent. Ray is belligerent. He will not even point to the like button on the
Gotta earn
YouTube
the
channel.
likes.
There it is. Thank you. There, it's right there.
Get your damn hand on the like button, Ray.
Perfect. That's exactly where the like button is. So go ahead and do that. That helps us a lot. You can follow us on social media. We're at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We do live events. We do a whole bunch of other stuff besides this. We have a lot of fun. So we invite you to join us on whatever platform you deem appropriate to you. We're there. We've even got the merch. Look at him rocking the shirt. I actually finally ordered a shirt. It's on the way. So I'll start wearing one too. I got enough of the hats, but that's going to do it. Ray, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Not a problem. Had a great time.
A lot of fun having you. Yep. We're going to have you back again. We're going to make those stars align. We're going to force the stars to align like Thanos. I'm going to take my Infinity Gauntlet and move things to get them aligned. City of Kick blog purveyor, Mr. Nick Leshy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
you. Take your lifesaver jacket off and go back to your Coast Guard. City of Kick will drop a link in the show notes for that. Go visit him there. And of course, Mr. Sean Grady, Drama from the Past. There'll be a link in the show notes as well there. And yeah, normally I'd say Eric, but we miss you, Eric. So I'm gonna say
Come
that
back.
much. Come back. But that's gonna
Back
do
in
it.
the picture.
Yeah, we could put him in. We could put a still frame and just make believe that he froze the whole show. We could have done that. You know, we can kind of just put a still frame. But no, Eric will be back with us next episode. So
Awesome.
don't you fret. But for Ray, for Sean, and for Nick, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind and rewind.